It's 6 p.m. here in Korea. I'm Daniel Che for Arirang News. Before we begin, here are the headliners for today. On the one-year anniversary of the tragic Sewol-ho sinking, we turn to the memorial services held to remember the victims and check in on legal proceedings and progress on improving safety measures in Korea. After attending a Sewol-ho ferry memorial and meetings, President Park Geun-hye ordered a plane to continue a diplomatic drive to help bridge ties between Korea and South America. And Seoul, Washington agreed to form a so-called Deterrence Strategic Committee designed to help the two allies develop more effective plans to deter Pyongyang's nuclear and missile threats. 1 year has passed since the sinking of the Sewol-ho ferry, and it killed more than 300 people and plunged the nation into a state of shock and sorrow. Our Kwon Soa was at Paengmokhang harbor on Jindo Island, where thousands of people commemorated the first anniversary.
Paengmokhang harbor off the south coast of Jindo Island. Last year, hundreds of families gathered here, calling out to their loved ones trapped on the sunken ship. Now this port has become a place for them to remember the 304 people who died on board. This port, the nearest point of dry land to the sunken ferry, is a sea of yellow, the symbolic color of the tragedy. Though a year has passed, Paengmok Harbor will remain a site of grief, especially for the families of the 9 people still missing. And that's why there have been unrelenting calls to raise the ship's wreckage. On Thursday, President Park Geun-hye went to the harbor and addressed the appeals for recovery.
얼마 전 세월호 선체 인양이 기술적으로 가능하다는 발표가 있었습니다. 저는 이제 선체 인양을 진지하게 준비해야 한다고 생각합니다.
She added that she will look into the possibility of a quick process in the near future. Other politicians and officials were present at the site too, as an official anniversary event took place at the harbor.
The government will do its utmost to prevent such a big tragedy from happening again.
He added that the government would listen to the bereaved families and the public's voices in regards to unsolved issues regarding the accident. Jindo residents and people from all across the country attended the commemoration too, paid their respects to the victims at an installed altar, as well as praying services throughout the day.
It was such a painful tragedy, and I felt like I have been forgetting it. That's why I came to reminisce with my child.
I came last year and this year too. I took part in the construction of the ship. It's such a pity. If the captain had called for an evacuation, nearly everyone could have escaped. That's what I believe.
But while politicians and citizens filled the event, the families of the deceased and still missing did not appear for a speech marking the day as was expected. Kwon Soa, Arirang News.
And of course, there's a somber mood across the country, but it's an especially sad day for the city of Ansan, located on the outskirts of Seoul. Many of the students and teachers from Danwon High School boarded the ferry for a school trip on this day last year. Less than 1/3 of them returned. Our Shin Se-min reports on the memorial events taking place in Ansan.
The city is covered in yellow ribbons and banners. At Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall, visitors crowd the doorstep of the altar, all of them trying to pay tribute to those who died on the ferry, mostly students from Danwon High School. Students and teachers from the school came as well, their heads bowing as they stood in front of their friends' portraits.
I've been following the event since it happened, but it was my first time visiting the altar. After seeing their portraits, my heart is overwhelmed.
A number of politicians, including the chairman of the ruling Saenuri Party, Kim Moo-sung, and New Politics Alliance for Democracy chair Moon Jae-in, came to pay their respects. But the country's prime minister, Lee Wan-gu, was turned away by angry families who objected to his presence. Their dissatisfaction didn't stop there. A citizen task force canceled a memorial mass that was scheduled to take place in the afternoon, protesting the government's delayed decision on salvaging the vessel and failure to carry out a thorough investigation. However, a group of citizens went ahead and marched through bad weather from the Memorial Hall to Danwon High School, some 5 kilometers apart. Memorial services were also being held at 126 locations across the country where citizens are gathering to mourn together. Although a year has passed, time hasn't healed many heavy hearts. Mourners leaving the Memorial Hall expressed their hopes that an accident like this will never be repeated. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Ansan.
Since the sinking of the Sewol-ho ferry a year ago, many of the people directly responsible for the tragedy have faced trials and have been sentenced to jail. But according to our Connie Kim, much of the legal process is dragging on, raising concerns that investigations will not fully reveal the causes of the accident.
In November, the captain of the ferry, Lee Jin-suk, who abandoned ship after telling passengers to remain inside, was convicted of negligence and sentenced to 36 years behind bars. The prosecution appealed the ruling, demanding that the captain receive the death penalty for homicide. The verdict will be delivered by the appeal court later this month. The remaining 14 other crew members have also received sentences ranging from 5 to 30 years for abandoning ship and violating ship safety protocol. Not much progress has been made against the ferry operator Cheonghaejin Marine Company. The company owner Yoo Byung-an was sentenced to 10 years in jail for violating maritime safety regulations. But the ruling came 5 months after he was found dead in a field, leaving questions about his role in the tragedy. His eldest son, Yoo Dae-gyun, was sentenced to 3 years for embezzling some $7 million from the ferry operator and its affiliate companies. Mr. Yoo's sister, Yoo Seom-na, is still on the police wanted list and currently fighting extradition from police on similar charges. Since the prosecution set up a special investigative team to uncover corruption in the maritime sector and the ferry operator, a total of 205 people have gone to trial and only 7 were found innocent. Officials say overloading of cargo and illegal redesign of the vessel caused the sinking. But families of the victims say investigations into the real cause of the accident are required to punish those held accountable and prevent similar accidents from recurring. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The National Assembly wrapped up 4 days of interpellation sessions this Thursday, while the final session focused mainly on follow-up to last year's deadly ferry disaster and the recent high-profile bribery scandal. Lawmakers also passed a resolution calling for the salvage of the Sewol-ho ferry. Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
Thursday's government questioning session began with a moment of silence for the victims of last year's Sewol-ho ferry disaster. On the first anniversary of the tragic accident, lawmakers grilled government officials over progress made on plans to strengthen safety measures.
According to a recent media poll, 70% of respondents said the government's safety response and management abilities have improved since the ferry disaster. What do you think about this?
The Safety Ministry is preparing diverse measures, including a nationwide safety inspection. I'm sorry to say that it takes more time and budget for a safety culture to be completely immersed in everyday lives.
Parliament also spent considerable time on the recent bribery scandal involving high-profile politicians, including Prime Minister Lee Wan-gu. Main opposition party lawmakers urged the Prime Minister to voluntarily resign.
It seems like people have already lost confidence in your qualifications as Prime Minister. Are you willing to step down from the post?
I think it is very inappropriate that a country's prime minister should be pressured to step down on the basis of one person's memo or testimony, even before the truth of the case is revealed.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly adopted a resolution on Thursday morning calling for the prompt recovery of the sunken ferry. Parliament called for the development of a plan to raise the ship as quickly as possible in an effort to prevent further destruction of evidence and show the government's willingness to carry out a thorough investigation. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And before leaving for a four-nation trip to South America, President Park Geun-hye met with the ruling Saenuri Party chairman Kim Moo-sung this Thursday afternoon. She told him that she may establish a special counsel probe into the bribery scandal. President Park also went on to say that she would use this opportunity to root out corruption and push for political reform. She said she would make further decisions on how to deal with the high-profile scandal after she returned from South America. The ruling party chief also said President Park requested that urgent livelihood bills be passed during April's extraordinary parliamentary session, and that work continues on reforms to the pension system for civil servants. President Park embarks on a four-nation tour of South America this afternoon. Officials say she hopes to use her summit diplomacy to secure more opportunities for Korea in the region. Our presidential office correspondent Choi Yoo-sun reports.
With a combined GDP of $6 trillion and a population of 600 million, South America, like the Middle East, is considered a region that can offer Korea a new growth engine overseas. Meeting with the leaders of Korea's four major Pacific Rim partners in South America, President Park Geun-hye will look to strengthen the partnerships beyond the economy to healthcare, education, defense, and ICT. In Colombia, President Park will discuss ways to deepen the two sides' strategic cooperative partnership, as well as help spur the implementation of the bilateral free trade deal, now awaiting the Colombian Constitutional Court's approval. On a state visit to Peru, President Park will attend a defense industry-related event. This as Korea seeks to export its light combat aircraft, the FA-50, to Peru, which is in the process of modernizing its defense capabilities. The third leg of President Park's tour will be Chile, Korea's first free trading partner. Based on the bilateral trade pact and comprehensive cooperative partnership, the two countries are expected to talk about further enhancing cooperation towards co-prosperity across the Pacific. On their final stop in Brazil, President Park plans to secure more business opportunities for Korean firms in the world's seventh largest economy. Korean business leaders will also have the chance to network with their South American counterparts, and there will be cultural events to promote Korean pop culture. Aside from her economic diplomacy drive, President Park plans to meet Korean residents who first settled on the continent during the 1960s and 70s as flower farmers, fishermen, and taekwondo instructors. Touting their achievements, she will ask that they bridge ties between Korea and the region. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea and the U.S. have agreed to establish a joint defense committee aimed at countering North Korea's growing missile and nuclear threats. This as the commander of U.S. Forces Korea continues to push for the deployment of Washington's missile defense system known as THAAD to the Korean peninsula. Our Na Young-kyung gives us the details.
Seoul and Washington have agreed to form a deterrence strategic committee. The deal was signed by deputy-level defense ministers from South Korea and the U.S. in Washington on Wednesday local time. The details of how the new committee will carry out its mission are not yet known, but officials did say it aims to combine and expand the operational plans from both countries in order to more effectively deter Pyongyang's nuclear and missile threats. On the same day, Commander of U.S. Forces Korea, General Curtis Scaparrotti, addressed House lawmakers in the U.S. and said, although Pyongyang has not tested the nuclear-tipped ballistic missile it claims to have, it is his job to assume that the regime has one and act on that basis. He reiterated the need for the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense or THAAD battery deployment to South Korea, saying it would give the U.S. a high-tier defense system and enhance the capability of Patriot anti-missile batteries currently on the Korean peninsula. U.S. Under-Secretary of Defense for Policy Christine Wormuth echoed his thoughts and told the committee that America needs to be prudent and plan for the worst-case scenario in terms of North Korea's weapons of mass destruction capabilities. The deputy-level meeting and the hearing follow last week's talks between Korean and American defense chiefs in Seoul, where they said there was no official discussion of THAAD. Until official meetings take place, the deployment remains in the realm of possibility. Na Hyun-kyung, Arirang News.
Russia says it fully expects to see North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at his lavish ceremony next month, marking the 70th anniversary of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. State-run Russian media outlet TASS reports that the country's defense minister Sergei Shoigu imparted on visiting North Korean counterpart Hyun Young-chul that Moscow is keen on strengthening its ties with Pyongyang through the highest-level meetings. The North Korean official is currently in Moscow for an international security conference. The Kremlin has already said Kim Jong-un will travel to the Russian capital for the May 9th event, but Pyongyang has yet to issue a public statement on the matter. If Kim travels to Moscow, it will be his first overseas trip since taking power back in 2011. Back here in South Korea, Korea's Hanbit No. 3 nuclear reactor came to an emergency halt on Thursday afternoon, just 5 days after it resumed operations. According to the Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Corporation, the Hanbit nuclear reactor was shut down at around 1:30 p.m. Korea time. Power plant officials say there were no problems with the safety of the reactor and added that the shutdown appears to be caused by the reactor's coolant pump. The incident comes less than a week after the Nuclear Safety Commission approved the resumption of operations. Hanbit was automatically shut down back in October 2014 as there were numerous foreign materials found in the plant generator. That's all for now. Primetime News with Hwang Jie is next at 10 p.m. For now, thank you for watching.